Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. I almost said, welcome to the Meta Cafe. So yesterday, my mind was wandering. But welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea. Sit back. I've got my beautiful light painter today. And let's talk about what is happening up in the sky today. Let me mute the background here as everybody begins to check in and say good morning. I will go back there in a moment. So today is a very light day in terms of the astrological landscape. Even human design is quiet, and that means the gene keys are also quiet. So there's not a whole lot of new energy pumping through the system. And partly that's because today we have a void of course moon that began yesterday afternoon and continues until 4:41 p.m. for me here in the West Coast this afternoon. So 7:41 p.m. for those of you on the East Coast. So you can see the whole day is literally a quiet one. And that, gives us an opportunity to talk about different things. It gives us an opportunity to maybe finish up some things that we started earlier in the week. Maybe it gives us some more time to contemplate the new moon on Monday, last Monday, and how it is that we can apply new energies to our current lives, how we might want to change up the routines, etc. And we're going to see that today's energy, even though it on the surface, there's not a lot of room for going somewhere, there are some really key places where the action can take place. And that's what we want to key into. Now, also, I'm going to start a series here for us of looking deeper at the parts of your astrology chart. Today, we're going to start with the ascendant, and then we will move through counterclockwise to we'll do this on another day. We'll go to the nadir, or the bottom angle in your chart, and then we'll go to the descendant, and then we'll go to the midheaven and give you a really good example through different charts of what those pieces mean for each of you. And that means if you are tuning in and you're new, you're going to want to have your personal astrology chart with you during our conversation. So if you have yours from a different person, great. If you do not have one, you can go to my website, www.living-astrology.com, and request your free human design chart or your free astrology chart, or both. Why not have them all, right? So you'll want to have that with you during this conversation. Today, we'll start the conversation with the ascendant. And we'll start here because it's really the representation of the mask that you wear. And it reminded me that I have this really awesome book that I read years ago. You can tell it's old by its cover being, it's well worn. And this is the book that I think I just checked on Amazon. It is available. There are 2 copies right now, and it says more on the way. It's called The Rising Sign, Your Astrological Mask, written by Jean Avery. And I remember when I first read this book, how profound it felt to understand myself in a better way, in a more complete way. So I'm not going to say better or worse, just a more complete way. As what she does here in the book is she takes your rising sign as the beginning point, and then she moves around the houses through the chart and tells you how it is that say Cancer rising sign affects your second house, where Leo would be the ruler, the third house where Virgo would be the ruler, and so on throughout the whole of the chart. And of course, she does talk, I think, a bit about, I can't remember now. I think she does talk a bit about the aspects that might be being made. Maybe no. She does not do much with the aspects that are being made to your ascendant. And what I mean by aspects to your ascendant would be the different planets that might either be sitting on your ascendant or maybe sitting at one of the other angles in your chart, which might be squaring then or opposing your ascendant. So those things color how it is that you view your life. So we want to get into that today. The Pleiadian-Earth energy day, I think, is really interesting, as it is a day of change and movement after yesterday's kind of integration point, right? The 4 where we were sitting at the foundation, looking for weaknesses, checking to see how strong it is, how sustainable it is. And today we go into changing energy with devoting as the earth energy, which is Ok in Mayan, which was the dog, the representation of the dog, and devotion, is represented here, questioning whether we need to change or move our loyalties. So, and it's an interesting day. Like I said, not much happening up on the surface, but definitely some energies that are moving through. So let's take a look. And now everybody's checking in. Hello, JLo and Valerie and Amy and Mimi and Allison. Kimberly, good morning. Amanda J, good morning. Jennifer Peachy and Debbie Tibbetts Tumiel and Ursula. Hey, you're with us this morning. That's so cool. Mimi says, ooh, sounds interesting. Camilla, hi, everyone. Destiny says, good morning. Camilla says, good morning, everybody. And thank you, Janet, for your email. Oh, you're very welcome. Very, very welcome. So what she is talking about is the offer that I made to everyone that's new, because a lot of you already got this. And maybe some of you missed it, the offer in December, and I believe in March when I offered it, for a personalized 2020 astrological calendar. And literally, it just takes me moments to input your information and it spits out a report for me to send to you for July through December, so that you have the calendar like I use. I showed it yesterday, but I'll show it again today. This is the calendar that I use every day. It happens to be August's, but it tells me the in the blue or the lighter colors up here. Sometimes it's pink, sometimes it's green. Tells me what is going on for me personally. And then underneath it is the transits that are going on for the day. And I remember something else I forgot to send to you guys that requested it yesterday, and that was a definition of the symbols. I forgot that I was sending that originally. And then you can always know by looking at your own personalized calendar what is going on for you in that particular day. And it's more of a learning tool. At first, you're going to look at it and go, it's all Greek to me. And a couple of you yesterday firing me off question after question about it. And I love it. It means you're interested in yourself, right? Finding who you are and really understanding the astrological talk that we have, or the words and the tones, the information and how we pass it along. So if you're new or hadn't received yours earlier, then please send me off an email to janet@living-astrology.com. And I need your birth date, your birth time, your birthplace, as well as where you are currently living, because that helps me set it up in your time zone so that timing is correct for you. Okay. Because, different time zones, like for example, today's, breaking of the void of course moon happens at 4:41 p.m. my time. But if you're in Europe, that's going to be 7 hours later, right? It's going to be 7 hours. That'd be like 11 o'clock tonight. For those of you on the East Coast, that's going to be 7 o'clock tonight. So time is important, and place helps me make the time zone work for you personally. Okay. Now, let's go back to talking about our ascendant. So the ascendant, for those of you who are new, let me see if I can put my chart up. I'll do the chart of the day. There you are. And we'll pretend it's a person. And maybe we'll even look at some people's charts out there today if we get a chance. So here is the chart of the moment. We'll pretend that's a person's name and that this is their personal chart. The ascendant is this point at the 9 a.m. position on the face of the clock. That is where all of the action begins to formulate in a person's life. So it really represents the entry point for you as a soul into, or as a body, as a person fully formed into the world. So what this is the calculation of what was on the eastern horizon when you were born. So whether that was at night or in the morning, it doesn't matter. There was a sign associated with your particular time of birth. So when you look at your chart, it'll say the letters AC here, which represents ascendant, but you might have also heard it called the rising sign before. And that's what is on the cover of this book here that I showed you. It's called the rising sign, your astrological mask. And we call it the mask because it's really the mask, the face that you put on, that you greet the world with, or that you greet other people with in your life. And so the sign that's here, and for example, if this were a person, this person has a Leo rising sign, it is going to color the way that they present themselves to the world. And in all, you've got 12 different masks that you can be wearing because of the time of birth and the part of the world that you were born in, and what would have been on the rise at the moment you came into the planet. This little point has a lot of meaning, and it is kind of there's a cross, if you will, that is in this particular chart that we don't often talk about it as a cross, but the ascendant and the descendant form the cross of the cross, and the midheaven and the nadir form the up and down upright part of this cross. It's similar to the incarnation cross in your human design, although it's built of different characteristics. So what it means literally is your ascendant is what was rising on the eastern horizon, but your descendant then is really about what was descending or setting on the western horizon at the moment you were born. And remember when a couple weeks back we were talking about the polarities or the oppositions in an astrology chart? Well, this is one of your oppositions, where this is the mask that you wear to show other people, and the descendant at the opposite sign is what you're really looking for in other people to help you live out your ascendant. So it's interesting because it shows us the mirror, right? The mirror of you out here in the descendant. And we'll talk more about the descendant and that point itself in another talk. Then we have the cross top here, or the vertical horizon, which is made up of the noon position. So when you were born, there's the eastern horizon and the western horizon. Well, what was at the noon position, right? The noon position, or overhead, and that becomes the midheaven, or how you view the world, or how you want the world to view you. And what you do in the world, it's often the career and the profession. And we've talked a bit about the planets up here and how sensitive of a point that is. And then at the bottom of the chart, this is what would be underneath the Earth. So exactly opposite of the noonday sun would be the midnight sun, if you will. So the midnight position, always very it forms more of the foundation of who you are, your ancestry. So the part of you that you don't see inside is the genetic and the ancestral forms that were birthed with you, or that walk with you in this particular life. So the foundation setting, the ancestral lines are coming through the IC, or the Imam Coeli, I think is how you would say that. It's a Latin term. We more often call it the IC or the nadir. It has, either term works. So today our focus, of course, is on the ascendant, but you can't really talk about the ascendant without really looking at how this forms some very important parts in your natal chart. This is your entry point, and it forms the first quadrant of energies, the first, the second, and the third house. And then the fourth house is the cusp of the nadir, or the nadir forms the cusp of the fourth house. And then we have the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth house. And then we come to the descendant. And the descendant then is the cusp of the next quadrant, which would be 7, 8, and 9. And then the midheaven forms the final quadrant of the chart, the 10th, 11th, and 12th houses. And indeed, when we look at an astrology chart, we're looking at quadrants as well, because if you note, just look at this chart, what do you see? Well, you see a preponderance of planets in this quadrant here, right? The fourth quadrant. You see a lot of planets here as well in the third, and quite a few here in the second, and really only the moon and the part of fortune sitting here in the first quadrant. So if this were a person's chart, what we would see is, wow, okay, so they're really working a lot of social energy, because the up here represents social and this represents personal. but their first, second, third house are not as focused on as the sixth house is for sure, and then the ninth and possibly the 11th. So we have, just an overall, if we step back and we look at the pattern in the chart, you can see where's they're going to be focused in this person's life. And that doesn't mean that there isn't anything going on here at the ascendant, because the ascendant begins the way that you will interact with all of these other energies. Now, going back to the ascendant, it also represents our natural defenses and how we're going to respond to the stimulus in our outer world, in our environment. So a Leo response to an environment or to their defense mechanism, if you will, might be a superiority complex, right? It might be that they come up, how wild animals in particular, like bears and lions and things, they make themselves bigger in order to scare off their prey or foes. And Leo will do the same thing. They sort of puff up, right? The lion's mane gets really big and really powerful, or they're scary looking, right? Because when they stand up and they get it and that roar, right? So a Leo person, a Leo rising, may greet the natural world with defenses that are about puffing up, which might be self-aggrandizement. It might be a natural arrogance, and it might be a false bravado, courage, right? There's bravery there in that particular way that they defend themselves in the environment when they're threatened. So the rising sign here would kind of give you an idea of how this person might react to things that are going on in their environment. On the other hand, they could be the opposite. They may shrink away. They may become very introverted because you have either a superiority thing going on or you have the inferiority, right? Both sides of the spectrum. And we would look to see, for example, what planets might be very close to the ascendant in order to more clearly see what this person might do. And I got a split here because I think here's the sun today at 0 Leo, and we have the moon at 24 Leo. So if this were a person being born right now, I would say that sometimes they're going to be all false and big and out there, and at other times they're going to be more mild-mannered and, quietly inferior or quietly superior. But all in all, when I look at the sun in the 12th house, I think this person is likely hiding somewhat of their light. And over lifetimes, they're going to have to pull out and become more confident. And that their superiority complex or their inferiority complex is really masking some confidence issues in their life. Because this is such a place of how you defend yourself, it also gives us our coping mechanisms. How would a Leo rising cope with what is going on in their world? This particular Leo might fall to the background, right? Rather than the roar, they may mew and move backwards. So throughout their life, again, they're going to be uncovering this power that they have. Now, you can also say that the rising sign, no matter what sign it is also the part of you that you allow others to see. It might not be the whole truth of who you are, right? It is, in your own estimation, the mask that you wear, but it's also the part of you that you'll allow other people to see. And for example, if this were a Cancer, well, let's stick with our Leo person here. This Leo rising sign may very much be they may only let people see the role that they're here to play, right? The drama queen or the drama king. They're not really going to let people see perhaps the underside, the more weak side. So when you look at someone, and I believe our president Trump here has a Leo rising, and if not, he's got a Leo North node, and he's got Leo written all over his chart. I do remember that much. So maybe the part of what he allows people to see is that arrogant, narcissistic individual, that somehow that covers up the hurts, right? The defenses that he has. So it's his natural defense system is to be large and in charge, and I'm the boss and you'll listen to me, and it's all about law and order, and we're going to do it my way, and blah, blah, blah. But what is that hiding, right? Because this is the part of himself that he's allowing people to see, because likely he doesn't like his own weaknesses. A Leo rising may not like what their own weaknesses are. And so they may have this act that they play with other people that they just don't want other people to see what the weakness is. So same thing with any of the other signs, right? If you put Pisces here, they may only allow you to see the dreamer, imaginative part, the intuitive part, but maybe underneath it all, they have a keen mind, right? Pisces very much loves information. It goes into the depth of things. It knows things from the deep. So it may be hiding that because maybe it was only, maybe the person that has the Pisces rising was only allowed to show either the intellectual part of themselves, in which case they're hiding the creative, or vice versa. So we can read that with any sign there as to how that's playing a role. This is also an individual's, your personal viewpoint. Think of it as the lens, right? You take off your glasses and then things are blurry. But if you put on a different lens, it comes into clarity. So this is your individual viewpoint, the filter through which you view the world. So you can imagine how a Leo might view the world in terms of they're looking for people who are courageous, who are brave, who are going to meet them and love them, right? Or in some cases, the sick Leo may be looking for sycophants, right? The people that are just going to kiss their feet. They only want the people that are going to play to what they see as their strong points, right? Tell them what they want to hear. Think about how that plays out in the world. And then they don't want to draw to them the people that they might have to compete with, that might call them out on their stuff. So we have, this idea here too, that, the people that you're attracting to you might show you what it is that your own viewpoint is in what you want and who you want around you. Personality is also indicated here, and appearance. I can't tell you how many times that I've looked at a person and went, Leo rising, right? They have big hair. They have, this presence you just sense, right? This power. Looking at a Taurus rising or even a Taurus sun, sometimes you see the thicker neck. You see the very sturdy look to their body. That is being projected outward again from the personality or appearance at the rising here. And other signs aren't so obvious. Gemini is a little bit harder to note. They're usually slender necked, slender, kind of look. There are Aries people. They're very youthful. You get more of their spirit, I think, than you see anything. But sometimes it's very obvious and other times just not so obvious. And again, you've got to think about what planets might be modifying because they're in conjunction to the rising sign. Now, your rising sign will also tell you the outlook that you have in your life, the lens, or again, the filter that you're looking through based on the circumstances around your birth. What did you enter into? Did you, the environment that you entered into, the environment that you lived in as a child, right? You're picking all of that environmental information up via the rising sign. So you can imagine, like, I looked at my Cancer. Now I know why I always wanted a Leo rising sign, because I looked at it through my Cancer rising sign, and my childhood was very disrupted. My mother had a stroke very young when I was only 2. And I was shoved off to foster homes after that because she couldn't take care of me. And no wonder with a Cancer rising sign that I came to become more withdrawn, right? More hidden, and became more safety and security oriented, and made an agreement. I remember doing this at age 4, making an agreement that my children would never experience that. So we look through our rising sign, we see the environment that we're in, and we make decisions in our very young years, and I'm talking probably the first 5, maybe 7 years of your life, that you make decisions that determine your point of view on the world and how you're going to interact with the world. Is it a safe place? Is it a happy place? Does it feel good? Do you feel safe? Do you feel secure? Do you feel wanted? Do you feel loved? Do you feel embraced? Or are all of the opposite to those things the things that you're picking up from your environment? And it is through the rising sign that people see their environment differently. So, you know, I have umpteen siblings, 13 or so of us. And let's just go with your siblings that you grew up with in your own house. And later, years later, you could have a conversation with each other and you view the same instance or the same event in your family in two different ways. Right? One person goes, well, my childhood was awesome. I played, I had fun, I did all these wonderful things. And the other person's like, what are you talking about? Remember that time when? And the other person's like, wow, because nobody, unless you have the same rising sign, really, are seeing the world through the same lenses. It's why when there's an accident that happens on a corner, right? There's all of these different spectators, perhaps, that people that have witnessed the accident, and you're going to get as many different people as there are really different ideas of what happened, because they're viewing the world through a personal lens. They're viewing the world through their own viewpoint, and how that viewpoint has come to be via their childhood conditioning, right? So this is where we go. This is that interface now where we come together with human design, when we're looking at the conditioning field that you were born into, right? And that you lived through. So the ascendant then indicates the decisions you make about the environment you were born into and how you would survive. How you would survive. So you can imagine a child born into, let's say, you know, a Scorpio child. Let's put a Scorpio on the rising, you know, where maybe there were a lot of secrets going on in the family. Maybe there was something that, you know, Scorpios are highly intuitive, and that person may have suspected something was not right in the family. That there was some sort of family secret. And, you know, later in life, you know, they learn to become more secretive themselves, because we don't, you know, speak of these things, or we don't, you know, we don't put all that out into the world. So they hold their emotions very close. And their Scorpio rising sign might have taught them that. And maybe later in their life, they discover that the big family secret was that they didn't even belong in this family, that they were adopted and nobody told them that, or, you know, any number of things that can happen. So we make key survival issues, or we make key survival decisions based on the issues that we've entered into. And your rising sign helps you see how that decision was made. And the ascendant then can also represent the walls that you put up around yourself to protect yourself from those decisions, or from those those instances, those things that might have happened out there, the circumstances that of your life, so that they don't threaten you. So there might be a facade, right? A mask you're wearing, right? We call it your astrological mask for a good reason. Now, all of this you know, in human design, when we look at a chart, we don't really see an ascendant, right? There, all the planets are represented, but not the ascendant. So I really see, and I sort of connect with the idea that the ascendant might be the conglomeration of the design crystal. So the design column is the red column, and all of those traits that we call your life purpose in your human design might be the representation of the mask that you wear, and how your life purpose would bring all those things out based on your rising sign. And then I would say that the midheaven was likely the personality column. The black column is likely your midheaven, right? It's the soul purpose and how you would demonstrate yourself out in the world. So that's a lot to take in, right? I got to go back here to YouTube, see how people are thinking about this. Ursula, would you please comment on the best partner or marriage for this chart, please? I could do that. I think, you know, Ursula, that's a great question, and I'm going to hold that question for after we have an opportunity to look at the descendant. But if I'm going to give you just like I'm going to go back to the chart so I can share that chart one more time. If I looked at, oh, I got to share. Sorry, you guys aren't seeing it yet. There you go. So if I were to make a comment about who I think this person would be good with, two things I would look at. First, I'm going to look at the descendant, because this is going to be the most perfect mirror of what this individual rising sign needs to find within themselves. So ergo, an Aquarian individual. right? There's going to be the need to have someone that is detached, a little more aloof, a little more freedom oriented to allow this person to really express their individuality. So this person is here to strengthen their individuality and differentiate a bit from the group. So they would need a partner that supported that. That's just a cursory once over sort of look here. But I also see the Venus in this particular chart, because Venus is the love principle and it shows our values and so forth. So again, I see another freedom sort of setting for love interest here, someone who is going to be that they can have a communication with, that there's an intellectual meeting of the minds, if you will, that there's also some freedom and not a relationship that chokes them out. There's also, maybe they want somebody that's a little more superficial and not, deep. And so their Venus is looking more in the Gemini quadrant, but also in the 11th house of this particular chart. Maybe they want them to be friends, that a friendship aspect of the relationship is the primary goal, and then it can move into love from there. And I just can't help but think that this is someone who also wants such freedom in a relationship, that it may be one of those kinds of relationships that are non-traditional, right? Where they're free to come and go within the relationship, what maybe they call an open marriage or an open relationship, that would suit the partners well. Lots of things to look at though in a chart, lots of things. If this was the chart of a man, we would look to Mars and see this person also needs the ability to be able to express themselves, to take action when they want to. They're a bit impulsive, and maybe a partner here would be need just somebody that was as strong, that doesn't need someone to need them, because they need some autonomy in this particular chart, independence. And maybe they don't, maybe they just have lovers. Maybe they don't really have, a marriage partner. Could be really interesting to think of. So let me go back and see the other comments. So Ursula, that's just the quick cursory once over. It's not really an in-depth sort of thing. J-Lo, it's funny because my daughter likes to be spoiled. She is a Leo and acts that way. Well, let's see what is her rising sign though, because that's really the mask she's wearing. And a Leo is just how it's expressing. Asa, what if you have a lot of activity around your ascendant? Well, great question. A lot of activity going on around your ascendant would modify the ascendant in some very key ways. So you would have to look to what those planets are and how close are they to the ascendant. Is it a conjunction, or is it, somewhat 30 degrees away? And how does that connect to all the other planets? So again, we've got to look at a bigger picture in a case like that. Loving light. This is a day for extra patience, even though patience is a quality we all have to adopt for years to come to a higher level with gentleness. I'm thinking you're saying that likely because this is so much information, right? And you have to be patient while you are learning about yourself. For right now, maybe just look to what the sign is on your ascendant. Don't worry about all the other goo-gaw, except Asa, I know you have more experience, so you could look maybe a little bit deeper and just try on for size. What does that viewpoint mean to you? So, if you, whatever sign it is, look to the qualities of that sign. What do you know to be true about that sign? And now bring it into that this might be your viewpoint. So if I have a lens and I'm looking through the lens of Leo, I'm going to see the world differently than someone who's looking through the lens of Cancer or Scorpio or something like that. Look to the quality of the sign. You could also see what inspires people through their ascendant. And fire is going to be inspired maybe by passion and creativity. Water might be more inspired by connection through emotions, right? Emotional connection or compassion and empathy and a closer in relationship. So we can, look at it through that. Just do that for yourself, without worrying too much about the rest of what we chatted about, at least to give yourself a beginning. Good morning, Kamal. Golden Leo season starts today, indeed. J-Lo, holy smokes, I was saying that to my daughter. I remembered when I was scared at 8 years old, and she said I did not want to see certain things. And if that means, for example, J-Lo, that what you were seeing were ghosts or spirits or seeing into people's future, seeing when people were going to die, and you know, that scared you and you shut that down, then your viewpoint becomes, that's scary, right? That's scary stuff. Asa, my two older daughters have the same rising sign, Aries. Interesting. That might have been an interesting household. Asa, yes, that's so true. I'm a Scorpio rising. Joy Ann says she's loving this chat. Allison, this is so awesome. Virgo rising here. Amy, energy. So Amy, seeing things through the Virgo lens. So through the idea of routine and what's, you know, maybe looking at how fragmented perhaps your environment might have been, and how you were trying to have, you wanted a more holistic view and a more healing sort of view of your environment. Again, looking just cursorily at this. Amy, don't forget to like the video. Oh yes, thank you very much. Please do email me for the chart and calendar. Thank you, Jen Laco6, for putting that up there. Janet at living-astrology.com. J-Lo, sheesh, that will be a whole chart reading in and of itself. You know, I know of astrologers that only use the ascendant, the sun, the moon, and the north node, or the nodal axis, to give you all the information that you need about how to live your life, right? They completely forget about Venus and Mars. I mean, I think they probably, I don't know how you could do that, but really in talking with a person, they get it down to really just a discussion of those, you know, 5 pieces or 4 pieces. And they do a fine job of being able to help that person live their lives. Ursula, enjoying today's powerful and useful talk. This is what we can do when we don't have all the craziness going on with other transits and so forth. Joy Ann says, have read how we can tend to feel like we are the ascendant, but we project the descendant. Ooh, that's good too. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Right? Because we are viewing ourselves through a specific lens. But what we really need to do is we're projecting that out onto the opposite. So if you have Leo on the rise and you're here to be really seen and heard and be the center of attention, but you are projecting that out into the group, you may feel like you're hidden. You may feel like you have to do things in a big way in order to get noticed. And in your human design chart, if that's coupled with an open throat, you may have a person who is a boor, right? Who just is the class clown, or someone who is always calling attention to themselves, whether it's looking for positive or more negative reinforcement. They're looking for that. They're projecting the need to be the center of someone's world out onto the group, that their family or the group that they're associated with. We probably all had people in our midst who were like that, who tend to take over the conversation or tend to take over any kind of group and make it all about them, right? That would be that Leo rising, perhaps acting out of an inferiority, being superior while feeling inferior. Patricia found Waldo. Yay. Great to see you, Patricia. And Jackie Piccola. My Leo rising is feeling happy today, entering into Leo season. Oh, I bet. Ursula, you offer us rocket ship to explore our charts. Hey, I like that analogy. Thank you for sharing the way to look for a partner in life. And I think we'll see too, as we move on over time, as we go into the descendant. I mean, there's such a bigger story here, right? The ascendant's one very important and powerful piece, but the next part we would look at would be the nadir. What's the baggage, the lineage? That's funny, they both end in edge. The baggage or the lineage that you brought with you into this lifetime, and how does that play out in your viewpoint, right? How does that play out in how you seek to find your way in this world? How do you find security and safety? And often that the development of that comes from mother. The 4th house is often related to mother, as mother is most frequently the most nurturing of the parent. But now in today's paradigm, there's so many different kinds of households and families, and what constitutes a family. The 4th house could represent the grandparents. The 4th house could represent the father. It represents the most nurturing person in your life. And sometimes maybe that's a foster parent. It can be any number of things. So we have to look at that. All right. Joy Ann says there is the early development of the archetype and the matured experience. Yeah, because, you know, as we're talking about this, remember one of the things I said was that this was related to the circumstances of our birth, the environment that we grew up in, and the conditions around us while we were growing up. So we make key decisions in those first 7 years about our environment and how how it's safe to express ourselves in the world. So perfect. All right. Anything else here? I would hope my kids, Scorpio's ascendants was experienced very differently than my Scorpio ascendant. Ooh, yeah. But remember too, you know, they're part of your lineage. So it might be useful for you to go back into your lineage, because I would guess, I just can't, every time I see a Scorpio rising, I think about persecution in previous lifetimes. You know, maybe persecution for being an occultist in a time where it was, you know, very religious, being hung, drowned as a witch, all of that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of us have had that experience in other lifetimes, but Scorpio rising then would see you naturally coming in with some hesitancy to engage the world on that level, right? Being, you know, that sounds like J-Lo's experience maybe of coming in and seeing things, or having that the mediumistic, you know, tendencies, being prophetic and speaking that out loud as a child in your innocence, and people shutting you down because you get the message that it's a taboo. And then you spend your whole life trying to reopen that back up because you shut it down. And, you know, it's difficult. I had an experience when I was, let's see, Heather was born when I was 21. So I was about 23 or 24. Yeah, oh no, I was 25. I was 25 when this happened. I had an angelic visit, if you will, as in I just no sooner laid down my head on the pillow at night, and suddenly appearing in front of me was this golden being. And in this golden light was this being. It was like the silhouette, like looking at a cameo, where I just saw the silhouette of this being, and it spoke to me and told me that my mother was going to die. And just, you know, those were the words, your mother is going to die tomorrow. And I remember jolting up and just being so upset with myself that I would think of that. And at that time, I was a young mother, and I said, I don't want to know this stuff. I don't want to know. So at that moment, I sort of, out of fear, out of a protection mechanism that I had learned as a youngster, I don't want to know when people are going to leave me, or when people are going to die, or when, you know, that's going to go away. So for the longest time, I didn't see anything, right? That was in my 20s. I didn't come back to metaphysics and to the more spiritual world until I was in my 40s. So I shut it down for that 20-year period until I said that I'm open again. And at that point, then I started having a lot of dreams and things that were much more overt than that 20-year period where things were very much quiet, because I said that's what I wanted. So we can always change we can change those words later, right? We can go back and we can go, okay, I'm open now. Thank you for protecting me, but now I'm open again to receive that. And Debbie Tibbetts to me reminds me of you, how, you know, at one point you were a medium, and whatever, I can't remember what the instance was, and how that shut down, and opening that back up now to be able to have that connection. Asa says, yes, as a Scorpio rising, I so feel I was a witch in a past life, especially with Neptune right on my ascendant in the 12th house. Oh yeah. And all of the victimization that might have gone along with that, right? Truly persecution, and you know, maybe even going back further than that, right, into your lineage and your family dynamics. So it is amazing if you take that trip. If you take that trip, you might find some really cool information. So, okay. Now, if you have other questions about that, go ahead and put this down. I want to just go through the rest of the day just so that I can say we did something besides just the ascendant. But this was an important conversation, and I think it is a part of the basics of what you need to learn about who you are, right? You need to know your sun sign, but now you also need to know your ascendant because it modifies the sun. For example, I'm a sun in Gemini, very articulate, very about communication and socializing and networking and all of that. But my rising sign Cancer sort of makes that more hidden for me, not to mention the fact that my sun is in the 12th house. So not coming out of the shadows, particularly, kind of being pulled out and emerging in that way. And everybody's chart is going to have something like that modified your rising, or how the rising modifies your sun. Works both ways. All right, today our moon in Leo is in the void. So in the void, we don't start anything new that's of great importance. We can maybe clear off our desks, finish up projects. I started a project yesterday, and I'm going to use today's energy and maybe even tomorrow's to finish that up for next week. And that's what the best use of this energy is. Later in the day today, the moon will move out of Leo when it breaks the void and move directly into Virgo. So tomorrow, literally all day, we will be in the sign of getting her done, right? Getting things done, routine, and dealing with becoming holistic and changing, dealing with healing energies and the body and the very physical world. So no new contacts with the moon today. The last aspect we were left with yesterday as the moon went into the void was the sextile to Venus. And we talked about how that was about re-identifying our values, and are we living by our values? Are we aligned heart, mind, or are we off somehow? And so that was the last contact that the moon made. So we are kind of left with an elongated period of time for us to be able to consider all of that, right? To be able to see, are we in alignment? And if we're not, then we can take steps to align. At 1:37 this morning, my time, the sun moved into Leo, and we are now in that Leo time of year. Yesterday, we went through a lot of the qualities about Leo, so I won't go through all of that again, but know that this is a time to focus on loving each other. This is about family interaction and having fun. Finding the things that you love. Love and romance are part of this. The drama and the traumas that go on in Leo, being inspired, living from your passions, being self-expressive. This is in the 5th house. The sun is the ruler, and the sun is the ruling planet for Leo. So we have the 5th house, Leo, and the sun all interconnected. The 5th house is what I like to call the fun house, right? It's where we play. It's where we take vacation, where we recreate fun from our childhoods, right? So we're going to connect to that more inner child that wants to come out and play. So the Leo time of year is much more fun. It is also where a lot of attention gets called to us as individuals, where we're being asked to step out of the creative process eventually and to express ourselves in the real world as the energy shifts again in Virgo later in the month of August. So right now it's the creative, right? It's at the drawing board. What would you like to create in your life? The drawing board is where Leo energy is. And if you could get a blank slate and draw your life upon it from here on out, what would it look like? Because now you're coming from your heart's desire, right? You're coming from the heart, not the mind's limitations on what you think you can do, who you think you can be, but more free than that to really just design your life based on the heart and the heart's desire. So we're dealing with desire energy. Later in, as I go into the membership, for the membership people that have the webinar next week on what's coming up for August, we're going to go into the human design aspects that come out during this Leo time. So we have the energies of commitment. What are you committed to? What are your desires, and what heart-centered energies are you pulling up now to be expressed? There's leadership energy here as well in Leo, in this Leo time of year. And what do we expect of our leaders? What are we receiving in our leaders? And how do you step up as a leader, right? And how do you enter into leadership? So Leo makes good leaders when they are aligned with their heart and their mind and not through the shadows of the Leo side of things. So that is huge energies, and all of that is playing out wherever you have Leo in your chart. Whatever house Leo is in is where that is primarily showing up for you. The only aspect of the day from an astrological point of view is Mercury in a sextile to Uranus. So Mercury now, you know, is in forward motion, and he's sitting today at 10 degrees of Cancer, moving, picking up some speed now, because we know August 4th, he's going to move finally out of Cancer and into Leo. So we're finishing up some Mercury in Cancer messages. How do we solidify a foundation? How do we become more nurturing? How do we take care of one another? And today, a sextile, hold on, I'm talking too much. We have in a sextile, a 60-degree relationship between Mercury and Uranus. So between Cancer and Taurus. So in fact, Uranus is sitting exactly at 10 degrees, 27 minutes of Taurus. And Mercury was sitting at 10 degrees, 13 minutes of Taurus. So, you know, we're talking almost exact sextile. And in a sextile, what we see is that there's this ability for these two signs, these two planets, to talk to each other. They're talking the same language, right? They have the same gifts and talents. It's like colleagues, right? So you may, let's say you're a professor of archaeology, and you have other professors that maybe are of paleontology or maybe cultural anthropology, and yet you're speaking, you know, your focus is on different parts, but you're speaking the same language. And so you understand one another. And that's how a sextile works in your chart. So these two energies are different, but they also speak each other's language. And the language they're speaking today is about new ideas and new approaches to solving old problems. So taking a nurturing approach, perhaps with Cancer, bringing it more to the home level, to the level of humanity, not so much the corporation or business or government, but down to the people, right? The purple people. The people. And Uranus with that ability to awaken and to stimulate creativity and ideas. So they come together in a way to maybe help us see things in new ways. There's also a bit of scientific thinking that goes on between these two planets of the mind, right? The Mercury definitely rules the mind, our thinking, data recall, pros and cons, and analysis, and all of that. And Uranus is more of the higher mind that tunes in to the field above and just brings in inspiration and ideas and ahas and in sort of genius-like ways. So Mercury's genius is in the day-to-day working of the mind. Uranus's genius is in bringing in the new. So we have them together today. And it also is that strong scientific thinking that's based in intuition, right? Intuition, the spark there of being inspired to see things differently. So creative ideas today that inspire action, although the action may be slowed down still a bit because of the void, the ideas are coming. So write them down, right? Today, change it up. This is a day that you need to vary your routine, because sometimes when we fall into a routine and we do things the same way every day, it becomes very hypnotic, trance-like, and we're just doing it. We're going through the motions. We're not really living, right? We're not really living each moment. So routine, while it's awesome, and this Virgo moon loves routine, it is also sometimes something that can dampen your creativity. So periodically, you have to change it up, and today's to change it up. Think of a new way of being in your day, right? If you normally listen to my show in the morning and then go off and eat breakfast, which I do, or you go and do something else that you do every day, try to do something different. Reverse the order, right? Do something completely different today, and it may stimulate your creative energy. It may stimulate some inspiration, maybe a solution to a problem that you've had that comes up for you spontaneously. Okay, also today is 5 voting in our Pleiadian energy. 5 is the energy of changing it up, right? So we see there's this little connection here between the day and the energy. Changing it up, moving. It is very much about an energy that has to move in order to see change or to break out of rigid structures or rigid forms or rigid ways of thinking. That the 5 energy gives us that opportunity to transcend. That's our umbrella energy for this 13-day period, right? The transcending. So for 5 energies giving us the ability to change, to be able to work through that transcending process. Devoting energy is our earth energy of the day. And devoting energy is a really sweet, loving energy. I think of, well, because the Mayan symbol is Ak, which is the dog, it always reminds me of the loyalty of a dog, right? No matter what, dog is always there. And I always think of dog as God in the mirror, right? The word, if you reverse it, is God. And seeing yourself being loyal to something much deeper than what we think of as in the outer world. And it also asks us to look at, where have we placed our loyalties? Are they misplaced? Is someone demanding your loyalty inappropriately? And what does that mean? Right? How are you able to break out of that pattern? How are you going to move things to become more loyal to your own self? Now, I'm not saying don't be loyal to your party or your family or to your country. I'm not saying that at all, but I am suggesting, what is that loyalty being? What is required of you in order to be loyal? Because it may pull you away from what you value. It may pull you out of your own moral code or your own ethical compass. And if that's the case, then today's your opportunity to get back into alignment with those with integrity and becoming more loyal to those things that are more important to you, that really suit you and serve you in a very positive and powerful way. Uh, it's such a crazy kind of energy, I think, because 5 is change, you know, and to me, it's sometimes we get caught up in, being loyal to something that we don't need to be. And so I'm thinking of loyalty in other ways too, not just loyal to a person, right? Where a person demands your loyalty because you're of the same party or the same religion or the same thought form, but loyalty to a product, loyalty to, being a certain way. And sometimes that doesn't serve us at all. So today, maybe think about those things that you really hold yourself to. Being loyal to, for example, remember how it took me a long time to move from Facebook over to YouTube, because I felt like I needed to be loyal to Facebook because I'd been on there for so long and I had a following on Facebook. And it was really scary to leap over to YouTube, so that I had to really go, why am I being loyal to Facebook, for God's sakes? Right? I had to look at a bigger picture, what best served what I was doing and best served my listeners. So that's a kind of small thing in the bigger context of the world, but all of us choose to be loyal to certain things and certain people. And why? Why? Right? What is that? Looking deeper at that today, and then making change if it's appropriate to make change. All righty. So that is all I have to share with you today. And I know I say that, but it was a lot, I know. I'm going to go back here and see if we have some comments. Asa had many visits in my childhood, I'm guessing via angels or guides or fairies or whomever. Joy Ann says, I appreciate the insight into Cancer. I know it well. And Jackie says, 5th house stellium here, lots of play and childlike creativity. Oh, so this is that where what sign do you have on your 5th house? Is it Leo or is it another sign? Because there may be some new opportunities for you around that area in your chart. Asa, I remember the song, The Purple People Eater. I don't know where that came from, Asa. It's too funny. Maybe I needed to wear purple today instead of black and, my bright other colors I wear. Valerie, good call on taking a day to wrap things up rather than starting something. Going to shake things up a bit today. Nice. And JLo, how will we know if our children have been in a past life with us? Which house or part of the chart shows it? That's a tricky one. And I would say that if you brought children here into this life, that likely you have had, right? There's a family lineage going on. Now, once in a while, I had a psychic tell me this, once in a while, you have someone new that joins in, that maybe they played a different role in your past lives, still fairly close. And this life, they choose to come in and, be your child. Or they choose you as the nurturer, the mother, or the authority figure, the father. And that happened here in my own with my own children. I have 3 of them that are, here with me from long ago, and 1 that is new. And it's so interesting to look at the interaction of that one against the backdrop of the other 3. And not bad. I mean, it's just different, right? Just different. There's this different viewpoint that he brings into the family than what the rest of us all resonate with. So I can't help but think that maybe he came to stir the pot a bit of our family, that maybe he stood on the outside looking in and decided this time he was going to plop himself in. We all as a soul group agreed, and he comes in and stirs our pots, if you will, in a good way. So you can, there are ways to look at that. A lot of 12th house, 4th house, 8th house connections between you and your children point to past lives together. You can often tell, there's so many ways, right? So many ways. And I don't know that there's any one cookie cutter mold that we can look at. But if you were looking at your own chart, JLo, against your children's charts, and you see connections between the 12th, the 4th, and the 8th houses, those are the houses often that we think of as past life connected or lineage connected. Karmic connections, those are the places you can look. I remember doing very early in my astrological life, doing a series of readings for a group of women. I didn't mean to, it just happened, right? One person came in and she liked her reading, so she had her sister come in. Her sister had her other sister come in, and next thing we knew that the mother was in there. And so I was doing this major sort of reading with all of these people, and they all shared major planets in the 4th house. For the younger people, it was Pluto in their 4th house. And you got to think about that. Pluto in the 4th, Pluto in the same sign. Not so weird that all the siblings of a family would have the same Pluto, but in the same house? What? Really? And then the mother had, I think, her moon in that 4th house. It was just so striking to me to see these connections via the 4th house. And they were a family of Wiccans, right? There was a really distinctly pagan upbringing, and you can see that through their lineage just by looking at the charts. And that was very prominent. It was like in my face. Other times it's not like that. It's more subtle, and you have to have, more skill in bringing that part out. Sometimes you can't really bring it out specifically. I know sometimes when I'm doing readings with people, I get flashes of past lives and what their experience was and how that is showing up in this chart. But I can't quantify that, right? I can't quantify it. I can't really qualify it. All I can do is say, this is what I'm getting. So people that go up to the Akashic records or do theta healing often brought me into contact with people's other lifetimes. But I don't always see it in an astrological chart, nor do I see it always in human design either. But you can get a sense of it by looking at those 3 houses. So Jackie, and we see that often too, her son, the sun falls right on her father's north node. Wow. There was a big connection to your destiny there with your father. And whether that was an awesome relationship or whether it was a tricky, prickly one, there was a lot for you to understand about your father in taking on your how you were going to shine your light in this world. Valerie, I did a past life regression too. All my kids presented a great experience. Yep. I got to tell you guys this. I once got this vision of my oldest son as a Viking warrior. And I mean, he just appeared magically as this on my bed, standing on my bed with this sword. And it was, I have come to protect you. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. That was amazing to me to be able to have that. Those things don't always happen They don't happen all that frequently, but when they happen, it's like jarring because I could feel the truth of it. I mean, you only need to look at my son and you can see Viking written all over him. And I'd never made that connection until that vision, if you will. So life gives us these things, right, where we sort of get the connection. We see, I sensed right away because with my youngest son that he was the one that came and joined us, newly joined us, because I didn't intend on having 4 kids. I was only going to have 3, and that was it, right? After Wesley was born, that was it. And then I went back to school. I was going to college, right? I decided after I had him, I was going to go to school, and I started up my college education and discovered I was pregnant. And I was like, oh no, what up? And I felt there was something divine here. And it was weird. It was a weird feeling, but yet a psychic had told me that later, much later, that he was newly into our family lineage. So kind of funny. Okay. We do have many aspects in the same place, even my grandkids. Yeah. If you pull charts for all of your family members, you'll see. Ursula, love, love, love your Gemini vast sharing from your Cancer home. I never looked at it like that, Ursula. That's pretty cool. And Asa says, I love that story. I have goosebumps. There's, yeah, so much fun stuff when you just open up, right, and see. But it can come in many different ways from many different directions, and it comes sometimes unbidden. You could be looking for, 50 years of your life for the answer, and one day walking down the street, the answer comes to you. Life is like that. Enjoy that, right? That's part of the cosmic ride that we're on. All right, guys, that is it for me today. Tomorrow, Thursday, I'm sure we'll have something to talk about. Virgo, maybe we'll take a dive into the IC. We'll just have to take a look and see. I don't think we have any major aspects happening tomorrow except with the moon. So maybe tomorrow we'll take the next step and look at the 4th house cusp, the nadir. All right, that's it for me. You guys take care. Have a wonderful day. Go enjoy the summer, enjoy some fun, be like a child, and enjoy everything. All right, bye for now.